Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? Hope you can hear me. Let me get my speaker here. It looks like I'm good here. I'm going to give a few seconds before people can get in here real quickly. This won't be a long video. If you can't hear me or anything's problems going on, let me know in the comments. And I don't think I'm going to be able to respond to our comments because I got a lot of things to do today. Obviously, it's Memorial Day. And this video is really to honor those people who sacrificed the ultimate price that you can pay to save this country. And I was hesitant of doing this video for several reasons, because you don't want to. I don't want to trivialize things either, or make it seem like it's something that is contrived, right? But at the same time, I was inspired by this story for several years now, and I really dug into it, and realizing what happened at a deeper level made me even more appreciate this. And I've done videos in the past, in the 70-year anniversary of Iwo Jima. I think it was 70 years, 75. It was, I can't remember what year, 75, I believe. And I did videos like that, and of course, about Gettysburg and so forth. So my expertise really lies in the American Revolution and the Battle of Gettysburg primarily. I like the World War II era as well. Such a big topic to cover. But particularly, I like the Battle of Midway. And that's what this video is going to be about. It's going to be, hopefully I get through in about 15 minutes or so. I just want to, basically, number one, just honor the people that did this, because I'm pretty sure most people don't know about this story. And I think it's really, really incredible. And so the first I want to do, let me highlight what I want to do here on this particular video so you know where I'm going with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cover what the Battle of Midway is about, okay? Why it's important. What the stakes are for this particular battle. What would have happened if we had lost that battle? And what did it do by us winning the battle? The Americans won the Battle of Midway, for those who aren't familiar with that. It took place about 79 years ago. And about 3 days from now, actually, be June 3rd, 1942. So that's also appropriate as well, I think. And also, the story, you see the thumbnail there, with the torpedo bombers, the squadron that sacrificed an amazing sacrifice, which, I mean, I like stories that deal with what ifs, right? I thought about doing the 1st Minnesota, which is a regiment in Gettysburg on July 2nd, 1863, where second day of the battle, toward the end of it, there was a big gap in the center of the line, and the Confederacy was about to breach that line, and there was no one else to fill that hole. And the person who's over the area, General Hancock, I believe he was the 2nd Corps, I believe. I may be wrong on that. And it was his responsibility for the area. He didn't have enough men to do that, so he flooded the area with about, I think I have the numbers here, about 700. Well, I don't remember how many it was, but it was about a lot of people against a lot of people. So it was like a 5-to-1 odds, and not many came back. And that was a really key part in that particular day, which pretty much saved the battle for the Confederacy, for the Union. But I don't want to talk about that. But I like stories like that because it shows you one small thing, one small sacrifice one huge sacrifice can make a big difference in the broad scope. Of course, we have America in one union. We were not separated into countries, so that was a really important part in that. For this particular battle here, I'm going to go through this real quickly. The Empire of Japan, Yamamoto was their emperor, I believe, or he may have been their. He was the commander of the Japanese fleet, and the situation there was they wanted to have resources so they can go out and to conquer the Pacific, to gain control in the area, but they needed America to be out of the way. They needed supply runs, they needed energy, and so forth. So they attacked Pearl Harbor. We know about that, to kind of get America on its heels. They had hoped to get the entire Navy fleet on Pearl Harbor, including the aircraft carriers. They didn't. The aircraft carriers were actually out at sea on the way back, so they were safe. So the whole landscape of the naval battle went away from destroyers and big battleships into carrier-based ships like aircraft carriers, which had a broader range and everything else. And that changed the tactics all in all. By force, we had to do that in order to compete. However, the Japanese Navy was twice the size of America's Navy, and we hadn't had the chance to build up our Navy to compete with them yet. So now we're talking about Midway, which is about a year later, so. And what happened with that is Japan was on the defensive because they had just been attacked over Tokyo over something called the Doolittle Raid. It was a raid in which the Americans actually bombed Tokyo. So it was it didn't do much damage there, but it definitely, the psyche of Japan was shaken. So they wanted to go on the offensive to attack America and remove the rest of the U.S. fleet out in the Pacific. And so what ended up happening there was a battle in a place called the Coral Sea. And then they set their sights on Midway, which is a small island in between roughly Hawaii and Japan, okay, or in the middle of the ocean. It was a base that U.S. would use to refuel and to launch attacks somewhere else. It's like a launching off point. So Japan wanted to create a situation where the U.S. had to defend an area that was so critical that they could not defend it. And so in doing so, they wanted to set an ambush for them and then have the carrier fleet come out there, and then they would come out there and they would sink, the three carriers that we had. I believe it was the Enterprise, the Hornet, and the Yorktown, I believe. So that's the stage, right? At the end of the day, America won the battle through a lot of bravery, a lot of heroics, a lot of luck, and a lot of God's will. And if you study the battle, you understand that's the situation there. But I want to focus really on the torpedo squadron. And these people were new in combat. These gentlemen many of them had never flown before. And many of them had never flown with what they call a pickle on the bottom of their plane, which is basically a missile. These were torpedo bombers. And so essentially what they would do is they would come in. There's a picture of one here. I can get you a picture of one here. So let's see here. This is it right here, right? So this is a VT3, VT6, and VT8. And so they would dive in low to the ground, to the ocean, and they would drop their weapon and hope for the best, okay? They were slow, they were lumbering, they were not a dogfighting type of aircraft. And so what happened here was really monumental in the history of Navy warfare. And so I'm gonna walk through a little timeline here, if I can do it. I'm gonna have some notes here. And so Nagumo was the admiral of the Japanese Navy, Nagumo. I also believe that he was also the one over Pearl Harbor, the attack there. And so this attack on Midway was to wipe out the remaining Pacific Fleet of America. And I get into what happened. I will get into what we think would have happened had they were able to be successful here, which is pretty scary to think about, but it's interesting because I want you to know that this is a very, very important battle, and everything done here was at the most highest level and came at, in many cases, the most highest cost. And so what happened here was through a series of deals. The plan was for, let me pull a map up here real quickly, get you one that you can see. Go in here somewhere. All right, so this here, you see my mouse right here, this is Midway Island, and this is actually in the center of the Pacific. And the goal was for Japan to come in and do a land attack onto Midway and take over the island. In doing so, that would prevent the U.S., well, that would force the U.S. to come in and take it back, do an amphibious attack back on their own island. That was what they thought. But America, after Pearl Harbor, had put a lot of intelligence into code breaking. And America decided, you know what, let's put some effort into this. And they were actually able to decipher and break the Japanese code of how they're transmitting. Similar to the Enigma code over on the Atlantic, but that's a little bit less complicated, but they were able to figure it out. So they knew, they had an idea that they were going to attack somewhere in Midway. And they even did a little stunt saying, we're going to ask for some water here at this location here. And then Japan fell for the bait and then confirmed that that location was Midway. So they knew it was coming. They just didn't know when. So the Admiral Nimitz was the overall Navy officer for America. He put defense systems into Midway Island, the Marines, and he also set a trap for the Japanese at a point called Point Luck, about 200 miles north. I guess that would be northeast of Midway. He had 2 carriers there and one coming in with Yorktown, because that had been damaged at the Coral Sea. It was going to be there soon. So it was the Hornet and the Enterprise already up there waiting in wait, so that when the Japanese would come in to attack Midway, they'd be ready to attack and prevent the land invasion on Midway. It's a really, really cool story. So Nagumo didn't know this. So he set his, so at the attack, he had land bombs on his planes to go into Midway, bomb it, take it over, and wait until the Americans came to defend it. He didn't think that there would be an American fleet anywhere nearby. But of course, we knew that, so we were already ready. Problem was, we were already outnumbered, so it was already hard for us to even win this battle just from a numbers game. So at the end of that, they ended up, so once the bombing happened, they realized, okay, something's not right here. We bombed Midway. There's no planes on the ground. It's highly fortified. I think they think they were coming. What's going on here? And through that situation, they decided to change their land bombs back into ship bombs, missiles, or torpedoes, because they're different. You can't attack the same weapons you do on the ground as you would in the ocean. So doing that, refitting all those planes to do that would take an hour or so. Okay, so Nagumo decided to do that. The problem was he was sending scout planes out to see where the U.S. force was anywhere in the area. And back then, they didn't have satellites. What they did was they had these scout planes, which had field of sight, and they would just fly in a certain pattern, and they would look with binoculars, right? And then if they found something, they would radio it back. Well, in this particular case, Nagumo's team said, okay, look, we find somebody. We see someone here. It is a U.S. Navy group. We don't know yet what's in it. So Nagumo said, okay, what's going on here? He says, okay, that's bad. So now now that I have my planes that are fitted for land bombs, I'm going to switch them over to missiles or sea effective weapons, which would take, like I said, an hour or so. But he also wanted to know, is there a carrier in that particular strike group? If there was, he knew that he was in serious trouble, because planes could cause serious damage. They have a much bigger range. And so a little bit longer later comes back, yes, there is a carrier in this particular group. And so now he's really worried. So now there's a bunch of stuff going on here that I don't want to really go through a lot of the details, because it is a little bit convoluted in terms of me trying to explain it without taking about an hour or so to do so. But I will leave links in the comments here below. But I do want to bring up these guys here. These are the Torpedo Squadron 8. In this article here, it says, duty, courage, sacrifice to Torpedo Squadron 8 in the Battle of Midway. Said that but some 78 years ago, really 79 years ago, 30 brave men undertook a task so incredibly courageous that their actions on this day will never be, they will be forever memorialized in U.S. Navy history. These people went into the battle with zero fighter protection. Okay, so they were going in to hit the Japanese carrier fleet. Okay, by themselves, brand new, never flown in combat. Many of them had never flown with a weapon under their plane. And by the count I have here, it's 29 or 30 men of the squadron lost their lives. And it's another thing I saw was 35 of 41 planes were shot down. Okay, so I guess some survived because of they ejected and were able to be rescued at sea. But not a single of these planes, how a single one of these planes were able to get a single strike or hit on any of the Japanese fleet. It was a total disaster. And so, and a lot of these people, these soldiers or these airmen, knew the stakes here, and they went anyway. They knew that if they were up against a Japanese Zero, which is their fighter plane, which is a very, very formidable plane. In fact, the Japanese Zero was probably even better than our Wildcat, which is another plane that we had, which wasn't topped until the Hellcat and later the Corsair. But at that point in time, the Japanese Zero was arguably one of the most formidable fighters in the entire world at the time. Surely no match. I mean, these torpedo bombers, sorry, I had to say here, you can say the same name right here. These BT-3s and BTs, 6s and 8s, were no match at all for the Zero. And so, and why this battle is important to me, and why I think it's important for all of us to understand, is that what this was able to do was it drew the attention away from the Zeros to protect the other carriers in the Japanese fleet. As they were coming back after this fight, they had to refuel. They had to land. But at the same time, another gentleman by the name of, I got his name here. His name is Raymond Spewitz. Raymond Spewitz. Okay, this gentleman here was admiral, and he decided to take a chance because his fleet was far enough out to the Japanese fleet that it would take another hour or so to get closer so his planes would have a chance to go, make a hit, and come back. He decided to do it anyway. And people call this probably the biggest military gamble, naval gamble in history. Because in that time window, by the time he decided to go, knowing that some of his planes wouldn't be able to land, we had to crash in the ocean on the way back. Regardless, he knew that it wasn't an issue of weaponry, it was a issue of time. He had to find them before they found him. And that was the thing. So Spruance sent his entire air force, his entire plane force to attack the Japanese fleet, okay? Just as that was happening, the torpedo bombers were being sacrificed. They were losing their lives in the ocean, crashing the ocean and being killed. At that time, they expended all of that. The Japanese Zeros were done. They were out of the weapons, had to go back. And that small window of like 30 minutes allowed for those Spruance planes to come in and sink 3 Japanese carriers. And that in and of itself turned the tide of the entire battle. And later, I won't get into this video, but later the Yorktown was hit later, but then it was fixed and came back. And because the Japanese thought that the Yorktown was done, they thought that they were on the same playing field, that they had 2 carriers to 2 carriers, but actually they were still outnumbered. And they actually took a rest. And on that rest break, U.S. hit them again, hitting the last carrier, destroying 4 carriers in a span of 6 hours, turning the tide for the entire Pacific battle. So first of all, I want to apologize for not being as articulate on this because I am still learning this, and I encourage you to correct me where I'm wrong. I'm sure I made many mistakes here, but the overarching story and narrative is there. I feel I did a good job doing that. So lastly, I'm going to talk to you about the stakes of the battle, and then I'm going to talk about my overall feelings. So what would have happened if this had gone a different way? What would have happened if Midway had been a total disaster, or let's say the Japanese just barely won? Let's stick with a total disaster. If it was a total disaster and they were totally caught by surprise and America lost all their carriers and Japan had pretty much, near 90% functionality across the Navy, what could have happened? Well, one thing that would have been in jeopardy immediately would have been the island of Midway. The Japanese could have very conceivably gone in there and attacked and held that position. Some say they couldn't have, that the Marines still could have held, but that's neither here nor there. I'm saying in this scenario, let's say they are able to do that. and they are able to take Midway. Well, what happens then, next thing you know, is now Hawaii is at stake, part of the Alaskan islands are at stake, and the coastline of America is at stake. And doing so could have caused a situation where the public demand in America, which already at the time was not really happy with the Japanese empire, they were really fearful and angry with Japan. So the public sentiment could have been to move the Atlantic fleet, who was battling Hitler over there on the with Britain, move some of that fleet over to the Pacific. What that could have done? Well, it could have made Britain have more power, less power to defend themselves. They could have actually been overrun. There could have been a peace settlement there in Europe. There could have been a situation where the islands around Japan, they were occupying, the Okinawas and the Iwo and the Guadalcanals, and those other areas they were using to hop and free those islands to get closer to the mainland of Japan. Those easily could have been still within Japan control, and those people would have been under more oppression. And so, in short, the whole war could have been lost on both the East and the West fronts. And so, personally, I think the timing would have been difficult for Japan to do that because America was building ships left and right. By the end of the war, they were building like 1,000 ships a year. So it was only a matter of time before America was able to get back to speed. In fact, even Yamamoto, Japan said, look, we don't want to attack America mainland because there's a gun behind every blade of grass. And so he was like, we want to do that. So I don't think that would have been an issue, but I think there could have been a situation where Britain, the war there could have gone a little bit longer. The Enigma code was still there, so they still could have used that code to avoid, the U-boats and so forth, and maybe help to avoid the devastation they had before. And plus, radar technology was getting better, and so it could have been a longer war. I don't necessarily think it would have been the end of the war, but it very well could have been. And so my point is the fact that it really could have been the end of both fronts lets me know that the sacrifice that these gentlemen, these Torpedo Squadron 8 gentlemen did, which I'm pretty sure most people haven't heard about, is an amazing sacrifice. And to all the people, the descendants, the family members, you should be absolutely proud of them for their commitment and their dedication. And also, I want to say that this country is incredibly important to me and to my family and to everyone I know. And I know it's important to people around the world and what she's done to liberate countries, to provide freedom, to provide hope. And in the climate we're in right now, I think it's even more important for people to make these kind of videos and talk about it, because I think people forget that narrative, the true narrative of what America's all about. So I am done rambling. And if there's any questions or comments here, I apologize. I can't get to those. I got to do some family stuff here. I just wanted to just say that because that was on my heart for a little bit while here. And with that, I'm just going to just drop off here. MC, we got some comments here. I'm going to put it on the screen here. Just because. Okay. I think this great spellcast. Okay, I think that's spam. We won't go with that one. Okay. Okay, let me see. Yes, they should get treated better. Okay. All right, that's it. So anyway, hope everyone has a great Memorial Day weekend, and I hope everyone really thinks about this country and what this country has done for everyone. And I appreciate everyone's support on this channel, and I'll see everyone next time.